conversations. That's none other than Joshua Jericho Volinski, Esquire, my good, dearest friend here at MNN, and he's been in my corner, and he's my friend, and it's so good to welcome you to the program. So good to see you, Josh.
It's really a pleasure to be here, and it's always such a great experience because you get to see the show that's on before, and the one that was before was with John Brendan. Was a wonderful show.
Oh, well, that's the one. This is going to air on Thursday next week,
Yeah.
and his is going to air on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So
this one is going to air.
This is going to air on Thursday next week. Yeah.
On Thursday.
That would be the. I'm not sure.
Both of you were cool, calm, and collected, with lots of excellent information and a wonderful approach to trying to improve the society and world we live in.
Yeah, John's a good guy. He really, that program he does is really good. The salon he does and everything.
Yeah.
And he's a very thoughtful guy, and well, and so are you. So
Yes.
This is going to be another great program.
And you have a lot in common with Joe. You and John. You and John do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You bring people together,
Mm-hmm.
and you have significant discourse on essential topics,
Mm-hmm.
and you have fun doing it.
Well, yeah, I know. We've been doing it a long time, and he's been doing it a long time, and you've been doing it with me for a long time.
Yeah.
And so all of that said, now let's get down to cases and everything. What we're celebrating this week, okay, we're airing a program about public access with particular emphasis on our own station here, Manhattan Neighborhood Network. So we're doing some programs from the past with Dan Coughlin and George Stoney and maybe Zenaida, okay? And so it's about MNN and public access.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you are very interested in public access. You believe in it, and you're a great stalwart member of the team here and everything. You have the Josh Volinski show that you do very well, very thoughtful. And you've also got, and that's against a lifetime, it seems to me, of concern for the human condition that is the Josh Volinski bio. And I wonder maybe you could here, in a thumbnail kind of way, share that bio with the audience, because you were involved in the bookstore and with the college, the university uptown and so forth. Share your own background a little bit, and then let's talk about public access and communication in general, particularly public access.
Well, I went to City College. I majored in art.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a pretty good painter.
Yeah, it's
and
true.
I minored
Yeah.
in psychology.
Uh-huh.
And when I was at City College, I got a job in the bookstore, the institutional bookstore, and I stayed on for 50 years.
Oh, wonderful. To get a gold watch, you should have gotten a gold watch after that.
We got a few things.
Yeah, right, yeah.
At the end, I sort of cut that, like many people do who stay on a job a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of got a kick in the butt, but not from the university.
No.
From, you see, by that time, when I got my kick in the butt,
Yeah.
what happened was the universities stopped owning their own stores.
Uh-oh.
As long as the stores were institutional, they bent over backwards. Like City College store originally was the publisher of all City College publications.
Mm-hmm.
If a faculty member wrote a book,
Yes.
if a faculty member published a book, the bookstore would pay for it
Uh-huh.
without any charges to the professor. If a student bought an item, they would have a time interest plan, a time payment plan without interest.
Uh-huh.
The employees really got good interest, good benefits. I got a wonderful salary,
Uh-huh.
and I managed the phonograph record department. Later on, the computer department.
Wow, yeah.
I did the advertising. I invited. I did public relations, and I had concerts. See, the bookstore was huge.
Yeah.
We had concerts with Pete Seeger
Wow.
and
giant.
Herbie Mann
Yeah.
and Yaffa Yaconi
Yeah.
and Phil Oakes and
yeah.
even Bob Dylan and Joan Baez
Really?
came
Together,
by
did they
one day.
Oh, they came by. They didn't perform.
No, Joan Baez performed.
She did.
And she brought a nice
Yeah.
young man,
Yeah.
Bob Dylan. And he started to sing. And I said to Joan Baez, this man has a terrible voice.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But she said, Mr. Wolinski,
Yeah.
she called me Mr. Wolinski, but she said, Mr. Wolinski, do you realize he writes these songs?
Yeah, right,
I
right.
said, he wrote these songs? So he sang one song
Yeah.
about a member of the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah,
And and I don't remember the melody, but I remember the theme.
Yeah.
The theme said, this man was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. When he goes home at night, how can he look in a mirror and accept and face the terrible things he's been doing?
Yeah.
And how does he treat his children
Yes,
and his wife?
right.
That's what Bob put in the song.
Yeah, right,
And
right.
it's on recording
Yeah.
on Broadside Records.
It was released then into
Yeah.
the world. Right? Do you remember the title of the song or not? I mean,
Well,
blow it in
it's
the wind.
available on Broadside Records.
Okay, right.
And you can find it.
He was right on the money back in the
And
60s.
he called himself Blind Boy Grunt at that time.
No
Yeah.
kidding, really?
that
he
was
would
his-
he would have just been a young lad, or was that back in the 60s or 70s?
That was in the 60s, early 60s. Yeah.
Where he was singing downtown, maybe. He maybe just hit town from Duluth. He came in from Duluth, Zimmerman. Yeah, Bobby. Yeah, he was a giant. He had it right on the money.
Yeah.
I mean, he was right in
And
touch
he was
with
very
the zeitgeist.
shy, too.
Was he shy, really?
Yeah.
Was he really? Was he really
Yeah.
shy? Was he, right? Well, sometimes great artists are, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was amazing. So he was there with her, and Joan was singing.
Yeah.
She had a gorgeous voice.
Oh,
yeah,
her voice was much stronger in those days.
yeah. Well,
It has
yeah.
become a little mellow now.
Yeah.
It's still beautiful.
Yes, right.
But it's not that wonderful vibrato that she had those years.
Yeah, but where were you? Let's just say, where were you in your life's experience, including the university, the bookstore and all that? But let's say at the time of Woodstock. Woodstock was a moment of major transformation, I contend, and think it was a time of major transformation in the universe. There was something really big going on. And how old would you have been then? That was 1970,
Woodstock?
69.
I think about the same age you were.
Yeah. Well,
And I never went to Woodstock.
Yeah, I
I
was
should
there.
have gone,
Yeah.
but I never went. But I was featuring all the great singers of Woodstock.
Were you at the bookstore then?
Yeah.
You would have been. So you were in your 20s or something anyway. Yeah. It wasn't like you were a youngster. Yeah, I'm just having a hard time compressing all the time frames.
I
to
mean,
put
I
things
was featuring all the records, which at that time were on Elektra and Vanguard, and then, Moses Ash and Folkways were very strong in
That'd
those
be
years.
Woody Guthrie and stuff like that.
Woody.
And Seeger, yeah.
And I visited Woody Guthrie a few times.
Did you really? Okay,
Yes.
talk about that.
Well, Woody Guthrie cared about everybody.
Yeah.
And he was a man who was very sensitive and very, very committed to social justice.
Yeah.
And, when these immigrants were killed who were growing our crops
Yeah.
in that plane crash,
Yeah.
he was so upset he wrote a song about them,
Yeah. Yeah, he was
about
major.
them when they were killed in this plane crash on a canyon. That's one of his famous songs.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, he was just amazing. That was coming out of that horrible depression and the
Yeah.
terrible things and the Dust Bowl and that, you know, what's it called? The film, you know, the book, Jode and that, the famous film and all that.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you know what I did after that? After I met Woody Guthrie, I volunteered for Broadside Magazine.
Okay,
And they
yeah,
were
Broadside. I
located,
remember that. Yeah.
They were located at 215 West 98th Street,
Uptown.
a famous pre-war building.
Uh-huh.
And Broadside, people would send broadsides to the magazine from all over the country and even different parts of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Woody Guthrie was sending his songs, and so were Bob Dylan, and so was Melvina Reynolds, but so were hundreds of other people who've you never heard of.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was one man who was as prolific as Woody Guthrie, and his name was Will McLean.
I don't know.
So
Okay,
he published hundreds of songs of social justice and Broadside, but he was so unreliable, nobody has ever been able to record him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Broadside has about 2 recordings of him, but whenever a major company would try to record, Will McLean was as prolific as Woody Guthrie.
Yeah, was he guitar singer or what? What was he, McLean? What did he play? What was his instrument? What did he sing?
He was a guitarist, and he was singing a lot of songs of social significance.
Good, yeah, right.
And writing them. But every time he had a date with Elektra or Vanguard, he stood them up.
Deliberate, you know, you never met him, no.
I never met Will McLean.
But that was a well-known fact in the business, right? That he was very undependable.
Yeah, and the two publishers,
maybe
the
it was
two
his
publishers,
politics, yeah.
I'm sorry I'm interrupting there, but
No.
the 2 publishers were Sis Cunningham, who was originally in the Almanac Singers, and then later on she became a member of the Weavers.
Oh, wow.
Then dropped out.
Yeah.
And her husband was Gordon Friesen, who was the former editor of Masses and Mainstream, the intellectual publication of the United States Communist Party.
Wow, okay. Gus Hall, yes, yeah. Well, I'll be darned. So you really were getting the pulse of the nation at that station where you were at the bookstore at the university.
Yeah.
You were getting a real feel for what was going on in the nation, right?
Yeah. And I was a pretty courageous buyer in the record department. I would buy all these Folkways records, like Mongolian mountain music and all that
Throat
stuff.
singing, like like tuba,
So we were selling them.
And were you into the culture, as they say then, into the counterculture in your own philosophy, in your own thinking?
Yeah. I was.
You thought it was time for a real change, and that Vietnam War was raging and all that kind of thing and everything? Yeah. And there was a major civil rights was starting to emerge finally out of the South. There was a time of a real strong period of qualitative change that we experienced in our relative youth, you know.
Yeah.
But it was a time of major transformation, I do think, in terms of the whole operation of the universe.
Yeah. I'll tell you one story, one anecdote, which is true. I knew Andrew Goodman was killed in Mississippi, you know.
Oh, yeah, one of the 3.
One of the 3.
Yeah.
And I knew Andrew Goodman, and I knew his mother, Carolyn Goodman, the psychotherapist. And one sad thing that I can tell the audience is, at that time, when I knew him, I already lived on the Upper West Side.
Yeah.
So around the corner, because when that happened in the 60s, around the corner was a very poor African community. He lived on 86th Street, And on 85th Street, all up and down the street,
Yeah.
was a very poor African community.
Had it been
mostly Haitian.
Haitian
And-
immigrants?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
right,
And
Huh.
Andrew could have gone around the corner and actually done the same work he had done in Mississippi. And
Oh, he could have done it on 85th
yeah,
Street.
he could have done it right
Yeah.
around this corner on West 85th Street.
Yeah.
Because the Haitian people on that street were, you know, in very,
Bad
very
shape.
sad shape.
Yeah.
They were unemployed.
Yeah, terrible.
They
what-
were
Yeah.
illiterate.
Yeah.
There was a lot of drugs and prostitution
Yeah.
on that street.
Uh-huh.
In fact, there was a famous bar.
That's 85th. Where Columbus and or no beyond
well,
west of Columbus.
He
huh?
lived on 86th Street between Amsterdam and Columbus, and 85th Street between Amsterdam and Columbus was very poor, and
Yeah, you live up.
and I don't think these people voted too. They
Yeah.
needed somebody to
get
help
it-
them.
Yeah, to get voting. Yeah,
Yeah.
And you were living up there for. Yeah, you still live up there in the Upper West Side,
Yes.
where it's a Zabar's and it's an institution
Yeah.
thing up there. It's a great place to. There's an awful lot of liberal. Lerner, Rabbi Lerner, is there? I think. Yeah. Upper West Side is
Yeah.
is a great place to be. There's a lot
I'll
of.
tell you a funny story.
Do
There was
tell
one
me.
woman, she's the woman who turned in Clinton when he was with Monica Lewinsky. You know, she was the one who originally put the publicity out on it. She made the statement that there are so many communists on the Upper West Side, I can't keep up, can't keep track of it. So I said to myself, what is she talking about? I only know two communists. One guy.
And you knew everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a cutter in the garment district, and
That's not.
he
Upper
might
West
have been a
Side.
communist, but he claimed he found a way to outdo the racetrack, and he was making
wow.
money at the racetrack.
A tout, yeah.
he was a very strange kind of communist.
My daddy
when he-
used to play the horses a little bit.
He
you
always
know?
knew the right horses.
My daddy used to play the horse a little bit. He was a lawyer and everything, but but he had a cartoon I can still remember. Two guys walking into the racetrack, right? And the one guy says, "Harry, I hope the hell we break even today. I really need the money." The two walking in to do the power mutual betting at a racetrack. That was a funny cartoon. That just came to my mind when you're talking about races. But you were there, and you had all that education, and you were with the bookstore right from the beginning of your youth. How old were you when you joined with them? And
I
you
think
done
I
education?
was. I think I joined the bookstore in my late teens.
Late teens, even. So that was young. So yeah, and you were there literally 50 years with the university.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
boy, that's a long career.
And
And
I
what
have-
an interesting place to be, a bookstore, with
Yeah.
all the records and everything.
That's right, with records.
You were
and
getting a
great-
real education with the people coming in and out and
great
chat and
books
everything.
and-
Yeah.
I met great people like Professor Haywood Burns, who started the CUNY Law School.
Really? Okay.
He was the founder of the CUNY Law School, and he was a great, great man, and with a wonderful disposition, very kind, very understanding. I never saw him without a smile on his face.
Wonderful. Yeah. If you
Now,
can-
he was killed in South Africa in a car accident.
just an accident, not
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Of course, there's always
Yeah.
people with conspiracy
Yeah,
theories.
right. They're easy to hatch, aren't they?
Yeah.
They really are,
Yeah.
yeah. Because people are
Dr.
nervous.
Haywood Burns, and I knew Gardner Murphy, one of the fathers of modern psychology.
Really? Uh-huh.
He was, and then of course I knew your friend, Michio Kaku.
Michio
was-
Kaku's, we just aired a program with him today on the day we're taping.
Yeah,
the
I saw
17th.
that.
He's very good. Yeah, I like Michio Kaku very much. He's really brilliant. And he's got the string theory and he's understanding things in a he's a major guy. Yeah, I like him a lot. And you knew him. He would come to the, did you know him through
Yeah,
the
he
bookstore?
did me one favor.
Yeah.
You see, when the bookstore privatized, it became Barnes and Noble.
Oh, okay. Now
So-
when did that happen and how
That
long?
happened 1991.
91.
So Barnes and Noble kept me for 12 years.
12 years. Well, that's
And
quite a long
then-
time in itself. Yeah.
And then they found City College was very difficult. It was going through great transitions,
Uh-huh.
and the students were very difficult customers. So Barnes and Noble decided to sell it to Follett Books in Chicago. So they asked me to come with them.
Yeah, to
They
follow
said,
it.
we can't keep you at City College,
Oh,
but
come to Chicago,
we'll
you mean?
put you at Pace College.
Oh, Pace downtown.
So I
Yeah.
said, no, I love the professors. I love the students.
Yeah.
I want to stay here.
Yeah.
So,
That's when there came a party.
so I was always a very good, reliable,
Yeah.
but sort of very eccentric
Yeah.
type in the business world. In
Yeah.
other words, my customers came first.
Yeah, right.
I would do anything for
You
them.
were a human being. Yeah, a
And
good human being.
Follett could not take it.
Uh-huh.
And they fired me over some trumped up charge that I was responsible for pricing errors. So I was very upset that day. And I went into my local snack bar,
Yeah.
and there was a strange man reading a newspaper. And that strange man was Norman Siegel.
Wow,
He was
Norman,
reading.
yeah,
So
giant, yeah.
He
yeah.
knew me
Uh,
in a previous conversation, and he said, Joshua, no politics, no politics.
Mm.
Let's not talk politics. I said, no. I said, Norman, I've just been fired from the bookstore.
yeah, then yeah.
He said,
right.
why?
Yeah.
And I told him the story, that they just didn't like my very democratic type of service
Uh-huh.
and dedication to customers.
Yeah.
So he said, Joshua, I'm your lawyer.
Right,
I said,
right.
I don't know if I can afford you.
He
He said, no, pro bono.
Yeah.
I'm your pro bono lawyer. So Norman Siegel
he's a
started,
giant, yeah.
and Professor Crane
yeah,
started.
yeah, Crane, you work with him. Yeah, right, yeah.
I do CUNY emission
That's right.
deferred with
That's
him
right.
on
That's right.
Pacifica Radio.
That's right. Yeah.
So Professor Crane and Norman Siegel started putting out press releases of what happened to me.
Really?
And it was in the Post, in the New York Sun, in the Daily News,
Uh-huh.
even on WBAI.
And what were some of the results of it and everything?
The results was that the chief executives of Follett Books had to come in from Chicago,
Uh-huh.
and Norman Siegel set up a meeting, and he worked out a very extended severance plan for me
Oh, really?
for many thousands of dollars,
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
and they had to go along with it.
Boy, they should have made a movie out of that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that have been a great movie starring Josh Volinski?
Yeah.
The Josh and Norm show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been good.
And of
yeah.
course, there were
Yeah.
a lot of demonstrations.
Yeah.
And Michio Kaku made a speech at one of these demonstrations.
Was that a demonstration for you?
Yeah.
Really? Good for
Yeah.
Michio Kaku
He
there.
was saying,
He's a
this
good
man
guy, yeah.
has given me the best service for my life.
Uh-huh.
I mean, in my life, he helped me sell my book,
Well,
Hyperspace.
Yeah, Hyperspace is a great book. Yeah, all of his
And,
books. I got them all.
all
I've read
that.
them all. They're really good. He's a
And,
source of. He's a great popularizer of science. He
Yes.
really knows science, well, physics particularly, but he knows science very
And
well.
he's a great teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. He must be because he's very good at and he is interested in making it clear, not making it cloudy in order to protect some turf, intellectually or otherwise, but he makes it very clear and makes it available to the public at large. And I think that's a very important citizen's responsibility, don't you?
Yeah.
I think it is. Which might bring us around to the Josh Volinski show.
Yeah.
And the fact that you've come involved here as a major person here at Manhattan Neighborhood Network, the part of the public access realm. And how long have you been associated here? It seems to me we go back 10 years or something.
Yeah, about 10 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe 11.
How did you come to be in touch with it, and what do you think of it? Let's talk about public access.
Yeah, let's
as
talk
a public square. It's a very important source of information and communication and education and so forth.
Yeah, well, Harold, when I came here, I did my homework.
You did.
I read a lot of my emails, a lot of press releases, and I want to say one thing about public access.
Okay.
It's very, very important. It allows members of the community not only to express themselves, but allows them to bring their issues. And they've had all kinds of people here, people that I disagreed with, but I was very happy. But I really felt like that famous man where I said, I may disagree with everything you say, but I am very happy that there's a public access where you can come and express yourself.
Yeah, right.
So I remember Tommy, who had a real estate office on the Upper West Side and did a show in the Mini Express. He very often would talk about that he is something that I disagree with, that he is totally against gay rights.
Yeah, right.
He said day after day on his show, it's an aberration, but I disagreed with him, but I was very proud that people that I disagree with can have a show here and express themselves.
Yeah, you believe.
And of course, someone like Amy Goodman I love.
Yeah, you've known Amy from way back,
and
right?
you know, I go back with Amy when she was in exile.
Because down at the firehouse?
Utrice, Utrice lead
From
band.
WBAI.
And fired her.
Yeah.
And last night, before I came here, I watched an old tape from 2001 when she was in exile over at the firehouse.
with John Alpert. Yeah.
And in the office, working for her was Penny Arcade.
Yeah.
And so many, and your friend Lenny Charles.
Lenny Charles, God bless. I got to get in touch with Lenny. Yeah, Lenny's been a hero. Lenny's been a pioneer. Yeah. Dee Dee Alec was doing great stuff. Remember, but but go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So even to this day, there are people who have been banned and fired at WBAI, like Bernard White is here now.
Yes, he's doing a program. Good work. Yeah.
Paul DiRienzo is here, the former publisher of High Times magazine.
Okay.
He's here. Now they were banned and fired, and so and Melvin Simmons is here.
When you say fired, you mean from BAI?
Yeah.
Because you're a BAI guy too. You have a program on BAI. You and Mr. Crane, right?
Yeah.
What is that one called then again?
My show is called CUNY, a Mission Deferred.
So it goes back to your own experience at CUNY.
You can be sure that it's a mission deferred if there is no longer free tuition. There's no longer Josh Wolinski in the bookstore.
Yeah.
You can be sure
things really
it's a
have
mission
changed.
deferred.
And the students come out with huge debt now. It's terrible. They got a big burden on their back in order to get education, and we didn't have that problem when we were going to university. I mean, it was just an incidental thing, really. But that's a thing that's there like that. But public access. Now, you've been here maybe 10 years or so, and you think that public access has a really important role to play in terms of educating
And it has a large international role, too.
Okay, talk to it. Talk to it. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sing the praises of it. That's what we're trying to do with programming this week, is make public access
a
part of the
great
focus.
international role. And I've been reading and sharing time with the producers that are a little upset with public access for good reason. Some of them were like Dee Halleck was suspended for 1 year,
Yeah,
which is shameful. She's one of the founders of
Deep Dish
Democracy
Network.
Now and Free Speech TV and Democracy Now.
Deep Dish Network, remember you had that going? Yeah.
So these people, these producers, are trying to get things together. So they're studying the bylaws of M&N.
Yeah.
And they're studying the bylaws of ACAP, too, Association of Cable Access Producers. And what they're trying to do is trying to find a very decent, cool, collected, sensitive way of bringing everyone together, because they have great admiration for everybody. They have great admiration for the what has created Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and they have great admiration for ACAP, Association of Cable Access Producers. But lo and behold, if somebody like Dee Halleck is suspended without a hearing or arbitration of any kind, this is a pretty sad state of affairs.
Right. Well, it can be, yeah, and other people too. And the whole question of how you're going to have a facility operate and so forth. There was, I don't know how far back you go with public access, because there was public access before there was M&N. You probably can remember back, because if you were at WBAI, they used to be right on 8th Avenue, right near where we are. But there was public access before there was M&N. And the person who, it seems to me more than anybody else, who got that together, I've been talking with some of the old timers, you know, that were around, like Florence Rice and some of the people that have been around. It's been around public access since about 1970. Is about that time when Bobby Dylan was singing Something Was Blowing in the Wind. There was a big change, Woodstock, all of that. And it was a thing where at that time there was only about 10% of the nation was cabled. Cable was new compared to television, which was coming, and it was multimedia. And then at those times, they agreed from that time on, the industry representatives for cable television, which is a larger interest in terms of the overall communications. But they agreed at that time in negotiations with others, or people who were interested in it, to set aside from their net earnings about 5% of their video revenue. They set aside 5% of their video revenue to pay for or structures that was on what they call PEG, public, educational, governmental. And the governmental would be like the mayor's office in the case of New York. And then realized there were about 3,000 of these cable outlets that were building new. It was new expansion. There had been a study by the Sloan Commission report where they had studied cable, and it was titled Cable Television, the Medium of Abundance. That's the term you'll know, having dealt with me, that's a term that's of interest to me. But they had that, and they had agreed, and Lord Beaverbrook in England had said, you mean they're going to send a wire into the home that's going to bring data and programming, and they're going to be able to charge for it like electricity and meter it and turn it off if people don't pay the bill? He said, that's a license to print money. They're going to make a lot of money, okay? He could see that. And they wanted to get the franchise. You had teleprompter and some other smaller entrepreneurial things developing, and everything. And so then they had to get the franchise agreements from the various municipalities where. You think of it as like cable television's like the nodes or the neurons in the brain. You have the brain, and they have neurons, and then they have the axons going out. That's like the label going out to the community, you know, like a metaphor, a biological metaphor. But they had to lay the cables and everything, and they had to get the right to do that. And so there was a negotiation took place. And so they set aside 5%, and 2 of it was for 2 was for the government of New York, the mayor's office, and so forth. 2 was for education, universities, school system. 1 was left over for public access. That's where we are now, public access. And it used to be back then, it was just the individual entrepreneurial companies, teleprompter and all these other relatively small companies. That you go, and when you did you could make a program. You could go out with a Porta-Pack or something and make a program, and you take a VHS tape. And you used to go down. There was a place, Josh, where because I've been doing it, I guess, longer than anybody else in the country. I got the use of about the 8th Porta-Pack that came off the boat from Japan back in '69 and everything. But anyway, you'd go down there, you make the tape, and then you'd go downtown or something, and Josh, you'd go like this. It was like scoring dope or something. There was a little slide door that would go up. You'd stick the tape in, and the slide door would come down, and then they would air it. But it was just individuals, you know, doing it. But it was George Stoney, who it was 20 years ago now.
I love George Stoney.
Oh, George Stoney was a giant, and what he set up was an institutional structure for that 1%, because that becomes real money. And he set up an institutional structure that would be able to be seen by the industry as being accountable, instead of it just being, you know, very loose-ended for just individuals and that sort of thing, where you get certain idiosyncratic feelings and that kind of thing. But they set up it so, you know, you have accounting. They're going to put real money. So all this building and everything here, this is all built. The capital costs. And they got 45, 50 people on staff, you know, and they got accountants, and there's accounting, and people know what's what and what's going on, and accountability. So you have a board of directors, and you have a system set up, and all of that kind of thing. And that made it easier for the cable companies to be comfortably able and cooperatively able to supply on a 10-year basis the franchising agreement by which these entities operate. So George Stoney set that up for MNN, and it was a model, and you got 3,000 of these across the country.
I've heard so many wonderful stories about George Stoney. I even met a woman who he was trying to fix up with a good friend. But I want to say one thing that's very, very powerful before I go into really something very, very important.
Okay,
First of all, I did appreciate their commitment to freedom of speech when they had that famous doctor from Florida who was a Nazi, and he was doing this program with a portrait of Adolf Hitler behind him. And remember, they fired that guy. So that was a real commitment.
Who's the they in your sentence? I don't know. Who's they? They.
Oh, the management.
The management
they had
of what?
Of MNN.
Oh, of
they
MNN.
had to let him go because the African-American community, he really pissed them off by telling them that people of color were inferior. So they finally had to get rid of that doctor on Florida.
You mean as a person who was programming on MNN? I see. Okay, yeah. And that was MNN.
But the most significant thing about the emails that I've been getting is that the board of MNN has seats for 19 people. Gail Brewer has the right to appoint 2 members on the board. She hasn't.
She's ex officio.
And she has a right to sit on the board.
Yeah, she's
right
ex officio.
Now, there are only 5 people on the board, and they can have a majority, I think, of 4 people in a vote, and so on. And the 2 representatives who are supposed to be representing to the producers are not doing their job. So to me, there is, and also
Yeah.
we're not allowed to attend board meetings. And when Dee Halleck was suspended, she was suspended for videotaping the board and so on. So somewhere the democracy at the M&N has vanished.
Well, okay, but I wonder if I could. I just want to continue, if you don't mind. George set that up. That was about so they're celebrating 20 years now here at M&N. They've been here 20 years. It's 1992 and everything. And George was the chairman of the. And when you set up an institution, you have a board of directors, and the responsibility for the institution is with the board of directors. That's where the responsibility lays. They're the ones who have the contract. They're the ones who, in the name of that institution, are negotiated for what involves a lot of money. And that applies within the business world. You have a board of directors that are accountable in terms of, business organization or whatever and everything. And George was the chairman for a long while, and he was very democratically inclined toward the producer. He was a producer himself. And so he had a great interest in, let's say, the masses of people. One of the things you could have an opening to is people. Just normal people, the people that just are walking around the streets, normal people, and also people who are producing things at a relatively simple way, like a porta-pack or with a simple camcorder where you had a VHS tape and they'd do something in the park or something like that. And he was very settled. And then they had 17 people on the board. I was on the board. And Dave Channon was another act,
Wow.
I was on the board for a while and everything. That's when they were going to get Tony Riddle to be you have an executive director, but the responsibility for the institution and for the relationship to the cable industry is with the board of directors. And then George died. It was sad. We remember we got to there with Pamela Timmons. We were there a couple of weeks before he passed. It was so sad. He was beautiful and everything.
Yeah.
So what's happened is it seems to be there's a different leadership at the board of directors, and they don't seem to be of the same mind that Mr. Stoney was.
That's right.
And then I don't know how that works in teams of an organization. Let's just say in business or anything. I'm just thinking off the box because we haven't had much reporting about what the new way of seeing things are or is, and that's at their discretion and everything. But when you have a change of management, let's say, or responsibility, when you have a change, then you have a change of the way in which the place operates. And if they've been operating, they used to get grants to producers and all kinds of things going when George was there initially and everything. And it was new, but he was getting it set up in an institutional way that made possible a relationship with the cable industry that was in a certain sense responsible. And you have to have these organizations. You don't have a lot of loose individuals running around having responsibility for it. It's done by people who are responsible. And then when you have a change, the thing changes. The context changes.
And producers are usually essentially egocentric.
Well,
and,
a lot of them have
self-serving.
Yeah, people that, well, maybe, yeah, they got issues. They got issues they believe in, and there's particular, if you're black, you're likely to be interested in civil rights because you're being offended. Or if you're a gay person, you'd be interested in that because you've had something directed against you. Or if you're Jewish, you could be thinking about anti-Semitism.
That's
and
right.
these kind of, or if you're a lady, you got to think, ladies' rights or women's rights. And they have those things, and that's part of the population. It's very variegated. Or if you're any of the ethnic groups that are in New York, Irish, Polish, whatever, they got all these, and you got cultural, so there's a great variety.
Yeah,
and so,
the same is true in WBAI.
Well, then WBAI, I've seen the things, some of the things. I never got very involved with BAI, but I know, it's radio. And so they had these things, and they fight like tigers. They fight like tigers on there. I mean, really right to the death. I mean, and I'm very worried, Josh. You're familiar with BAI.
Too.
And Pacifica, you see, and that's another metaphor. Pacifica is, Joe Hill, and that was San Francisco.
That's right.
And they had five stations. It's not just BAI in New York, it's Chicago, and there's 5 stations, and it's a network. And at our party this Christmas we had this time, I was there talking when the police came. Remember the police came at the party, the holiday season party? And what I was talking with the guys from Pacifica, they're in trouble. They're in trouble economically getting the transponder time and everything like that to keep the network going.
I said to one
Do you
feminist,
understand? Is that true? Pacifica, not only Pacifica, but BAI is in trouble economically and so forth. And they don't have a relationship to the larger industry such as public access television has to the cable industry, which is part of the big players within communications writ large. You see what I'm saying? And they've got a payment where they make these payments where the capital costs and operating costs come and make it possible for the producers here to produce without thinking about money.
yeah, right.
Do you understand what a unique thing that
Absolutely.
is? Or what do you think of that? That's part of public access, and there's 3,000 across the country.
Yeah.
So that's a larger context than your own parochial one about MNN, what's going on. The
I
things
think
are happening
MNN
elsewhere.
has 2,500 producers, right?
I'm not
Something like
sure
that.
how many. I mean, I suppose
That's
it's a
what they
matter
used
of
to
record.
say. 2,500 producers there.
But what I'm trying to say is it's a larger context that you can take into account about when you're thinking rather than parochial, because each person is likely to say that person looked at me bad or this happened, and it can be on the basis of rumor and all of that, and they want to avoid it. And it would seem that what they're trying to do, for one thing, you have to guess at it because they haven't made a clear statement. They haven't come forth and made it, and so they will in their own time and everything. Dan, and that they'll make it clear what they've got in mind. But it seems to me, and it might be something worth considering, because rather than being so encouraging, which is a good thing of, let's say, amateurs, like we've got a 1/2-inch tape and we make a tape of a duck walking down the street or whatever, or whatever, idiosyncratic, but it's just done simply. And Dee Dee, God bless her, she used to have a thing with the deep dish.
Yeah.
I love Dee Dee. She's been going forever. And she used to have a thing where they had the chance to have electronic graphics, where you can have the graphics roll. It's now routine now in television and everything. But they deliberately put it on butcher paper, and they were wheeling it like this.
Yeah,
And there's something to be said for that. They were wheeling the graphics on butcher paper with marker, and they were doing it that way deliberately to make ordinary citizens not be intimidated that anybody can start making this television. It's democratic, very democratically oriented. I think they may be moving, and it may be under dent of necessity. I don't know. You have to guess at it. What's the thinking?
Yeah.
But let me just make the point, and then we continue. But is that they changed all the equipment, all the production equipment here, and they're about to change it for the broadcasting. Remember, 3 months they had to close down. Every piece of equipment we had to be taken out and replaced in order to accommodate the high definition. And now the digital thing is coming, and that's part of a larger world. 1809. Remember I used to have the office in the front of the unit where I am? Yeah, I had a little thing. It was Bruce Springsteen. Bruce Springsteen had a song. And I put it up on the wall. That was a long time ago, maybe when you and I were meeting.
Yeah.
But anyway, it said, my baby and I got married. We bought a bourgeois house in the suburbs, and the cable man came out, and there were 57 channels and nothing on. He was making a song about that. And now there's 1,998 channels, and that's moving exponentially. There's going to be channels, so the digital thing is coming, and that's coming. But it also brings the possibility of having professional, instead of, and it's fine. Everybody should have access. Everybody's got a cell phone, they can do it. That's democratic and everything. But maybe what they want to try and do, did you watch the Ken Burns thing yet? Do you see Ken Burns got a new series? Have you been watching it?
Yes.
The one about the Democratic Party? I mean the Roosevelts?
Yes.
It's
Roosevelt.
magnificent. Like
Yes.
What was the one about the Civil War that he did? Magnificent.
Yes.
Really professional, really good, really up to date. And what they want to do is encourage people here to reach professional type standards that is the hallmark of the industry writ large, which
Yes.
is a different vision that ought to be recognized also. Let's get some really professionally done stuff that can compete with the
Yeah.
big guys in Hollywood and in the major studio. That may be part of what motivates them in trying to get that as part of the mission rather than being necessarily just everybody who walks in off the street can do it in democratic. So that might be motivating, but you
Yeah.
have to guess in a way. But that's something that's worthwhile considering. Let's get everybody to where they can turn out product that will be comprehensive or competitive to the big guys.
And I think things like Dean Loren should be handled like a good union would handle it, with arbitration and hearings.
Well, we got a lot of things about
Just,
that.
You know, a good union.
Yeah, well,
do it.
that would be something seen in a way that you've got the bylaws and so forth that come out of what was a different situation. You've had a change. So there's a change in the management, or there's a change in the attitude and so forth.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you handle that, but and it's a different kind of vision, or not. I don't know, but there ought to be some. But the responsibility is with the board. And and there are people who think the responsibility should be with the individual producers. But I'm not at all sure that makes sense institutionally, because every individual thinks if their program can get out to the world will be okay. You know, they're very deeply invested in each of their own parochial views.
That's the trouble at BAI too.
Well,
and I want to say one thing about the facilitators. I find many of them really excellent and very caring. And I remember when on
that's part of the staff.
48th Street, they were changing flame and steak. So I found out, this was in 1983, I found out they were going to tear down Flame and Steak, the place that serves steaks cheaply, and build a hotel there. So I found it out from a man who owned a restaurant on the block. So I went into the steakhouse and I told the guys, the chefs there, that, you know, you're going to lose your jobs because they're going to tear this place down. And these guys didn't believe me. They wouldn't even listen to me. They said, get this guy out of here. He said, not. Well, the facilitators here are in the same situation.
Go ahead.
They really don't know, like us, what is going on under the new management. They are in the dark.
Well, I guess but also, yes, okay, maybe, like that or clear, or maybe there's this change, but then that's the thing that the society is in the dark. And what I'm trying to say is it could be seen rather than parochially, in terms of your own immediate thing or the way you see things or all that kind of stuff. There are larger issues and larger understandings of what's involved that you could take into account in a systems way, and we need that at a higher level of what in the world is going on, because a lot of these things are being affected by an unstoppable Niagara exponential increasing of not only information technology and all of the digital technology and the editing and everything like that. It's all changing exponentially, but now also the robotics are coming. The robotics are replacing the people in terms of production. The labor theory of value, which is such a darling to so many people on the left, is being challenged. At a systems level. And what we need is not parochial, oh, me, I'm so important, and all that kind of thinking that would be understandable and maybe should be supported in terms of an individual situation. But what's really needed is comprehensive understanding from the larger society that could be part of an autodidact mission of public access, and get at what's going on so we know, because we need that at all levels. And the establishment is in the same position. The establishment of the world is in that position. They're coming up against dilemmas that are testing the validity of all the institutional structures of the whole way in which the planet operates. There are larger issues that could be relevant rather than a parochial focus upon one person or something like that. But I'm just thinking that might be part of that's manning up, taking a look at the whole thing, and the whole society is guilty of not paying attention to that, allowing outdated institutions to still be reified and sanctified, all kinds of things that aren't relevant to a future that is now dawning and has to be related to. And so there's a falling down on the part of the whole world society.
Yes, you're eloquent and you're correct.
Well, I don't know if it's correct. I don't know. It's just a guess. No, but it's nuanced. And you got to have something where everybody can be included, and we're falling down on the job. And we shouldn't be just thinking our thing is such a thing. It should be included within a pattern that can be understood. And public access has a larger thing. It's 3,000 across the country for people to be able to communicate with new intellectuals and a place for people to go to communicate. That's more important as an issue, and that it should be put at a professional level that can really inform, and a place of education, autodidactic education. The universities are falling down on the job. They're all specialized. They're all just training for jobs and sort of thing. They don't have a vision. This is a place from which vision could emerge and be a thing that's really important in forming the whole human society. And there are larger issues rather than just the individual situation of an individual. But I don't know, it's just some thought. But MNN and public access is a really important institution that ought to be sorted politically, intellectually, and so forth, in my estimation.
Well,
I think you agree with that.
At this point, I want to make one joke.
Yes,
Let's
make
have
a joke.
19 members on the board that agree with us.
No. Everybody's got to get on the board of how we're going to. But you need to we need an operating manual for Spaceship Earth. What's going on?
Yeah.
All of our institutions are under stress, and it's got to include everybody. And we got to start doing it professionally. And we got to start providing a way of educating people, because the traditional means by which the society operates are not linked to what the future is allowing in a positive way. And is afraid if we got all this stuff going, they might unleash the weapons of mass destruction that would end the whole species. One of the problems in television is we run out of time. There's the tyranny of time. Josh, we've run out of time.
Oh, well.
Thank you.
Time
Thank you very
waits
much.
for no man.
Time waits for no one. It passes you by. Your pleasure had the perceptions of a grand sage of Manhattan Neighborhood Network, and a great person who understands things often from all very comprehensive perspectives, Jericho Volinski.
Yes.
And thanks, Josh, for coming. Always
You're
good
welcome.
to talk to you. Thank you for
It was
viewing.
a great honor.
We'll be coming back. We'll be coming back again tomorrow. So do tune in then, and we'll try to get some program about public access out this week. Okay. Thanks a lot, Josh, for everything.
Yeah.
It's good to see you looking so good.
And I like what you said.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm just fishing, just trying to understand it, But then that's the state of the whole world.
And our critics.
I worry about our leadership.
The critics don't understand it either.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of mysteries with them. Like, for instance, for instance, you take Joe and Paula.
Yeah.
Now, I watch a lot of cable. They're still on 20 hours. So they shouldn't say that they don't have democracy, because Paula and Joe are on 20 hours.
Yeah.
Because they repeat it, when you're on in the wee morning hours, they're on after you.
Yeah.
And